And we are live. Hi everyone, this is Juliana. We're here with Jill Liliedahl from Inventory Planner. We're here in the 16th episode of the e-commerce growth show. And I'm very happy to be here with Jill today. I'm a bit nervous because I'm very pregnant. And I was talking to Jill before we started the show that instead of me making sure she's good, she was trying to make sure that I'm good. And today we're going to talk about demand forecasting and how to increase cash and profits through a proper, for forecasting of your demand. We're going to talk about fulfillment. We're going to talk about a lot of awesome things that Inventory Planner is doing. But just to get started, I know, Jill, that maybe not everyone knows about your software and about yourself. And I know you're an entrepreneur, and I know you went from commerce to working for an e-commerce vendor.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about yourself and about the Inventory Planner.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks so much for the invitation to join you. You're doing great. You're going to be great. So nice to join everybody here today and talk about inventory and demand planning. So I started about 6 years ago now. I took over an existing e-commerce brand selling dog supplies. So I was a professional crazy dog lady, which was a blast because I love my dogs a lot and I could bring them to work and they could try out treats and everybody was very happy about the situation. But it was about a 20-year-old brand when I came in. And so really had started like even before Amazon, which seems like impossible. I mean, it's like a dinosaur in internet years. And so coming into this brand that had been around for a long time and had seen some really good success over the years, but the things that work early on when there's little competition don't work later when there's a ton of competition, especially in pet supplies, there's a lot of competition there. So one of the things we had to do operationally was just take everything apart and put it back together again. Like sometimes we had systems, sometimes we didn't. One example is that we had no system whatsoever for figuring out what inventory to get, how much to get, when to order. I mean, it was walking around in the warehouse and saying, oh, it looks like we should get some of that. I mean, there was just no system whatsoever. So that needed to change. So I started looking around, and at the time we were on BigCommerce, later went to Shopify, and found Inventory Planner, which worked and works with both systems. And so the first thing that we actually needed from Inventory Planner was just good reporting. We didn't know our margins. We didn't have an accurate centralized place to have all of our costs. I mean, just really, really basic foundational business information. So that was the first order of business. We had to raise some of our prices because we were selling below cost in some cases. I mean, it was ugly. So, but you have to have the data in order to fix the problems, so even though it's painful to go through at the time and it was, embarrassing to say our prices were so off, then you can fix it, so you have a foundational place and some place to go. So we had the data, then we started using forecasting to figure out what inventory to get. And so that not only would tell us what to get, how much to get, when to order, because the idea is not to wait until you're out and then place the order. The idea is to place ahead of time so you have enough time to, manufacture it, to ship it, to receive it in your warehouse, et cetera. So anyway, so that made our inventory situation a lot better. So one, we weren't missing out on revenue because we were out of stock. We could identify exactly what we were overstock on, which, we can dive into that too. I think it's, people don't pay as much attention to overstock, but it's like cash sitting on your warehouse shelves. Like it's got to go for cash flow. It's got to go. So we were able to really get our inventory situation in much, much better shape. Fast forward, we were able to sell the business a couple of years ago. And when the business sale looked like it was just about finalized, I started thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I could have, joined some other e-commerce teams. I was talking to some people, but I really thought, what do I really love to do. And I love inventory stuff. I'm just such a nerd for this, for this kind of stuff. And so I just reached out to Inventory Planner's founder, Oleg, and said, as you know, I'm a big fan. Do you need any help? And fortunately, he said yes. So there was no job opening. I just said, can I join your team? And fortunately, he said yes. So it's been a blast the last couple of years. I was the first non-developer on the team, so to come in and really build on the growth that we had seen organically up to that point and just start reaching out to different communities, get to know people like you. And so just really get the word out, and I can speak from personal experience about what it did for our business. I think without question, we would have run out of cash. We would have gone out of business if things were going in the same direction they were. Demand planning was so critical to us being able to sell the business instead of go out of business. And so I'm just a big believer in putting the data behind it, anticipating what customers want, and then having what they want for them so you can make the money and stay in business. So that's kind of my story. Inventory Planner. So we work with 30 different platforms. So wherever you're selling or whatever system you're using, we can plug into that and bring all the data together. So if you're on Shopify and Amazon and eBay, all of that can come out, can come together. You can see the total demand, place one order with your supplier if you want to, make sure it's in the right warehouse, and just be on top of where your customers are going to be wanting inventory.
That's awesome. And it's crazy because from basically, I know a lot of people that started in e-commerce, right? And they went to the vendor side from just having their own stores. So our own CEO, he was he had his own e-commerce back in 2007. He made a successful exit once he got to 200,000 customers or something like that. Yeah. And came out and created, OmniConvert Explorer and Review and so on. And now we are the ones providing for the e-commerce, because basically once you go through that experience of understanding how a merchant thinks and the issues that you have as a merchant, which are everything right now, it's much easier to go on the vendor side because you'll be able to provide something back, something in return. So it's crazy that you come from the same space. It happens for me as well. I used to work in web hosting before and advanced clustering, and it was super technical. And then I ended up working in e-commerce, and I was such a noob in the beginning, but now it's like I see things super differently. So I like it.
Yeah, it really brings a different perspective. It's really nice. Yeah.
Yes. So I have a first question for you. Yeah. What do you think about how e-commerce managers handle at the moment product assortment and fulfillment, especially during this period of, I hate to call it like the new normal, unprecedented times. But really right now I see a big issue, from what I see, it's a big issue with fulfillment and delivering what you are promising. So what do you think about how e-commerce managers right now are handling product assortment and fulfillment?
Yeah, so it's really, there's a couple different sides of it. One is getting products in time from your suppliers, and then the other is getting it to your customers in time, and seeing the supply times from vendors overseas in particulars, that really was clogged up for a long time. I think it's still not totally ironed out, but I know that there was literally an imbalance of where the boats were in the world. They just didn't need to go both ways. And so there was a problem. And so, one thing, we're in the beginning of August right now. I mean, I think if you have overseas suppliers, order now for the holidays. It is not too early. If I were on the merchandiser side right now, I would get on top of it. I would put those orders in. I would get them going just to be sure that we're not getting into bottlenecks. And that's if I'm shipping to my own warehouse. I think if you're selling on Amazon, that they're definitely dealing with backlogs in receiving, and some of that is better than it was a couple of months ago, but still, there's kind of a backlog there. And I think we're getting into Prime Day is tentatively scheduled for October. Yeah. So that's going to create a receiving backlog. Then we're immediately into the holidays. So I would just put everything really early and anticipate a ton of online demand. So I think that there's just a bunch of things coming together. I would be planning on the conservative side and just buffer in more time to my lead time and say, okay, I normally plan on, if I'm ordering from China, maybe 90 days, maybe I put another, 14, 30 days on that. Like I really would just plan in more time due to all of these backlogs for receiving and shipping and everything.
Okay, now that you mention it, it's gonna be a very crazy Q4, and
for sure.
Amazon definitely helped with that. So I wanted to ask you, because we are talking about merchants and e-commerce managers. What do you? This is something that I actually picked up last night. I was watching this webinar with Rick Watson, which I'm a huge fan of, from Area MW e-commerce. He's really cool, and he was saying something basically that for the merchants that are experiencing their first Q4, especially their first Q4 in COVID, which is something that all the merchants are experiencing right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, from inventory planning and product assortment and demand forecasting, what you think would be a good advice for them to take in consideration, besides the fact that they need to fulfill?
Yeah. So from a forecasting perspective, I mean, we're looking at, it depends on the sector, so e-commerce overall has been up a lot, but that doesn't apply to everybody. So, you could be in a niche that maybe it doesn't apply to you, but for a lot of the merchants we're talking to, like they've seen tremendous sales over the past couple of months. And then stack on top of that some of the things I mentioned before. So Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Another consideration, at least, US news that I've seen, is that some stores that traditionally would have, either Thanksgiving or Black Friday sales in person are not doing that. So Walmart, Target are not doing those in-person sales. So that's going to move online, not just for Walmart and Target, but it means more traffic overall. So even if you're not selling on Amazon, expect more traffic overall, just because everybody's going to be prepared to do a bunch of their shopping online, even if they haven't before. So just anticipate really high demand on top of what we've seen already this year. Definitely planning early as much as you can. Plan for things to go wrong. In my experience, it's rare that things just go according to plan 100%. So, I always am a little paranoid about like what possibly could go wrong about this, planning in some extra time to work out some of these issues, plan in some buffer. So that's, Q4, I think, is going to be super intense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be really, really crazy, because especially in the US, when the omni-channel is so big that you can sell on Target, you sell on Kroger, you sell on Walmart, you are selling everywhere. And basically, how I see it right now, it's all about how you are gonna deliver the promises that you make. Because I mean, the biggest thing that e-commerce is, I see, doing right now, the biggest mistake that they're doing, especially for the baby e-commerces or it's just that they focus so much on customer acquisition that they don't understand that is the time for them to look at, the customers that they have, and just try to create different types of experiences for them. So everyone is like just funneling money in acquisition. And after, if you check, at the end of the day, you got to break, the numbers, and they don't fit. They don't come back. They just bring these cohorts of new customers that never come back to purchase again. So instead of focusing right now on improving, the relationship that they have with the customer, they're much more focused on acquisitions. And unfortunately, they do not, I guess they don't meet the expectation of the customers that they have through their, fulfillment, process. So it's going to be really interesting for sure.
Definitely,
I wanted to ask you why, from your perspective, because this is a new topic for me and I want to learn from you more. I wanted to ask you, why should merchants forecast customer demand in general?
Yeah. So from a merchant perspective, cash flow is everything. So what we're trying to do is have an investment in inventory and turn that over into revenue as fast as possible. Like that's the point that we're trying to get to. So there's two sides to that coin. One, we don't want to miss out on revenue. So we want to have what people want when they want it. So if you're selling seasonal products, we don't want to have it in August when people really want it in December, because that's tying up your cash. Then the other thing is that overstock. So you don't want to commit too early. So we want to have it when people want it, and we don't want to have too much of things when they don't want it, because that's cash that's not turning over. So stock turn is the term for this. So the stock turn is very slow. So our cash is tied up. We can't put it into areas of our business where it's going to be more efficient, whether that's different inventory that's going to be faster moving, or it could be something in, towards acquiring new customers, keeping and retaining new customers, to your point, wherever that's going to be most efficient in our business. So we're trying to figure out, how do we put, let's say, $1 in and get $2 out? How do we turn this around as fast as possible? So demand planning, demand forecasting is really helping with that process. It's using what's happened in the past, because the best indication of what will happen in the future is how people have spent their dollars in the past. So if you're asking people what they're going to do, they're going to say something different than how they're spending their money. So let's look at the past behavior where they've actually spent money.
And the 1 year.
And say, okay, what does that tell us about the future? We need to think about what is the relevant time period in the past. So again, if we're looking at seasonal items, we want to look at what happened last December, and not so much in, August. It's less relevant if we're selling seasonal items. If we're selling trendy items, I don't want to look at what happened last year. I want to look at what happened in the last 14 days. So think about what's that relevant time period that will indicate what's going to happen in the future. And then, so that's kind of the baseline idea of demand planning. To take it up another step is to think about when you've been in stock and out of stock. So this is something that our system can help with. If you have a fairly small catalog, you could manage some of this manually on your own. But once you're hitting scale, it can be kind of difficult. So the idea is, let's say we're selling 30 units in a month. If we didn't pay attention to when we were in stock and out of stock, it looks like we're selling 1 unit per day. But if we were out of stock half the month, we're actually selling 2 units per day instead of 1 unit per day. So you can see it made a huge difference in the sales velocity. And so if we're looking ahead, we need to know that we're actually capable of selling 2 units per day instead of 1 unit per day. And that helps us know how much do we need to have on hand, because otherwise you could be missing out on, let's say, half of your revenue that could come from that order. So that the baseline is really thinking about what's the relevant period of data that I'm looking at. And then to kick it up another notch, you're looking at, when was I in stock and out of stock? How much did customers purchase when we had these items available? That's like the important part there, I would say.
That makes sense. And also, I'm wondering, so what size of company, or how old should the company be when they start doing, demand forecasting? Like, how can a merchant get started with this? Because in your case, when you started telling me about this, you said there was like an established company, but you didn't have things figured out back then. But I'm assuming that even for a start, a fresh, a baby e-commerce that has demand, of course, for their products, I'm sure, it should be like, it's different, how it applies. So my question, I guess, is, where would it be in a stage of maturity in e-commerce to be able to do this?
Yeah. So I think once you're getting some sales, let's say a minimum might be maybe 100 or 200 a month. I mean, I know that's a very low threshold, but you need some sales in order to start doing forecasting. I think, when you're just starting out, let's say below $500,000 to $1 million in annual revenue, and have a catalog of maybe 1,000 variant or 100 variants or less, you can handle this with spreadsheets. You can do this manually and do a pretty good job. So most people who are coming to Inventory Planner are handling things with spreadsheets. Some of them have very complicated formulas. They're really have figured out, a lot of different factors to pull in. But when you get to a certain amount of scale, it could be that $1 million in annual revenue. It could be over 100 products in your catalog. It just gets to be really time consuming. And a lot of people who come to us also have a vague sense that either they are missing out on revenue. They don't know exactly how bad it is, but they have a sense they're missing out on revenue. They also have a sense that they're overstocked, and they may not know exactly how bad that is either. So those are the two places we start. One, we want to make sure they're not missing out on revenue. That's always the first priority. Then second is identifying that overstock. And like I said, really clearing that out. And I think that can make a huge difference with cash flow. So with my perspective now, so I haven't been a merchant myself for a couple of years now, but I think having talked to several hundred, if not 1,000 or so merchants, I think I would be much more aggressive than I used to be in clearing out overstock. I think I was just too, precious about like trying to squeeze every last penny out of the stock we had. Well, guess what? Like, it's sitting there, not generating any revenue at all. It needs to do something. It needs to get out of there. So I think if I were to go back to that now, I would just be super aggressive about clearing that stuff out, getting whatever value I can out of it, and just moving on mentally, emotionally, inventory wise, move on, put it somewhere else in your business where it's really going to do something for you.
So when would be critical moment when you gotta move from the spreadsheet to some system like inventory planner where it gets out of hand, when you cannot scale no more, when you just simply need to like just put that aside and focus on your core business, like because I know there's a lot of merchants watching us and throughout LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever it's streamed right now. And they're always wondering every time we talk to a service provider that helps e-commerce, the services e-commerce, they want to know when is the time for them to be able to step into this. So when does that Excel become too heavy on you? Because I have my own experiences with Excel, but I'll let you first.
I think once you get into 1,000 or 100 variants, that's one key. And then when you're looking at $500,000 to $1 million annual revenue, that's when inventory planner can help. I think below that, you can definitely do the spreadsheet approach, and it will be a pretty good approximation of what you need. Maybe not totally precise, but I think once you're getting above that threshold, then investing in something like inventory planner, the time saved, the precision that it's going to bring easily is worth it. I say that as a merchant. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the team. Like, I think that the value that it brings to a company that size is very clearly worth it, helping to identify, where you would have missed opportunities otherwise. And again, where you can clear out overstock. So I think those two things, catalog size and then revenue, are good indicators when you can move to another system. I will say though, like for smaller merchants, if you want to come to our website, on our blog, we've detailed a lot of things about forecasting, even if you're handling this manually, even if you're doing a spreadsheet, so I break down an ABC analysis. So you can categorize what's my highest priority inventory, what's okay for an occasional stock out, and then what are things that I could consider removing from my catalog because they're not doing much for me. So some approaches like that. So, really trying to provide value in our blog as well for, even if you are doing this manually, we want to help you so that you can get to that point, of looking at a system, looking at some software that can help with your business and help scaling too.
I have a question. How do you guys catalog, the well performance of some products? You only do it from a transactional point of view, or you're doing something like a deeper analysis on how the consumers are viewing the product?
Yeah, so there's a few a few pieces of the forecasting that come into play. So one, we've talked about, is it seasonal or non-seasonal? Is it trendy, or do we look at a longer period of time? So that's the forecasting method that we would use. We need to know, importantly, does the merchant allow overselling? Do they continue selling when they're out of stock? So that's an important consideration in how we're figuring out how fast it sells. We look at what the lead time is, so how long it takes to order from a supplier. And then we look at how much stock they want to have on hand. So all of that's predicting how many units should be ordered of each particular variant. From there, ordering 500 units of a low value item is not the same as ordering 5 units of a high value item. So we can't just look at number of units to order.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I had to pick out one metric, I would take a look at forecast loss profit. Mm-hmm. So that is really saying, what is the cost, truly the cost of not ordering right now? What are we going to miss out on? Is it $100? Okay, fine. Maybe we're fine with that. Is it $10,000? That's a different story, So really just helping to prioritize, again, to cash flow. My experience is I couldn't order everything that I wanted to when I wanted to order. So I had to prioritize what are those items to order. And so I think picking that out, forecast loss profit, for me is like the one place to go. If that's difficult to get to, another thing you could look at is just the cost value of the number of units you need to order. So basically, what would you put on a PO, on a purchase order, for each of these items? And you could rank it that way. Okay, well, I have a lot to order from one supplier, so let's put in that order, get everything we need from that supplier, and make sure that all of those items are back in stock. And then we're okay with a couple of stock outs on a few other items. So picking and choosing what's our highest priority, how much can we get done with the pot of money we have available, and just making the most of that, I would say.
So this makes me ask another question, because as you probably know, I'm very interested in also in product assortment. So for instance, let's have this following scenario. You have an e-commerce that it's in fashion, because there's a lot of fashion e-commerces that are watching right now. So basically I'm saying, let's say they had a discounted product that was sold very well. And, if you look at the money, if you look at the margin, the product is great. You had a lot of sales, you didn't have returns, because as you know, when you buy something for cheap, you don't take the bother to actually return the product. Right. So let's say that e-commerce leaves with the impression that they have a star product, they've been selling the hell out of it. However, they didn't ever stop and ask the customer, are you happy with this product? Because sometimes, once you buy a product from a store, if you are disappointed, you won't come back again to purchase. Like, it happens to every one of us. Like, you go, I don't know, you buy something, if it's shit, you're not going to use it again. Yeah. So let's say we have this e-commerce right now that comes to inventory planner and is asking you, like, I want to order this product because it's selling good. But they don't ask themselves, okay, so but why do people drop after they purchase this product? So are you guys capable in any way to see things like this, anomalies like this happen?
So it's a combination of things. One, if we're talking about fast fashion, where they want to be really responsive, we do have a forecasting method for that. So, maybe we want to look at what happened over the last just couple of weeks. Our largest account is fast fashion, and I know that they take a look at weekly, what are those trends, so that they can be super responsive to what's happening. So if demand is dropping off, then they know, oh, okay, stop ordering stock of this item. But part of it relies on business intelligence of the merchant as well. So we can provide data based on what's happened in the past, but if there's something happening in the future, or they have plans, or there's something related to the customer coming up, we do rely on the business intelligence of the merchant too. So this could this could be the scenario you described, where it's a bad product and eventually it fizzles out. It could also be an upcoming promotion. There's nothing in the historical data to say you're going to have a promotion in September. We rely on you to say, okay, we know that this is going to go well. Here's how other promotions have gone, and plan in for that. And then the system can queue you up at the right time and say, okay, now it's time to order to make sure that you have enough on hand for that. So it's a combination. We can present data based on what's happened in the past, but do rely on that business intelligence to know what methods we should apply, and then what that looks like in the future too.
So do you think merchants are in general data-driven?
Say that again, it cut out a little bit.
No, I was saying that, do you think in general merchants are data-driven? I know it's a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a mix. I think we talked about that threshold before of roughly $1 million in annual revenue. I definitely have talked to a lot of merchants who maybe have a real marketing focus, and they found something that really worked. And they got to that point, and then they're kind of looking behind the curtain and saying, okay, operationally, this is a mess. Like, it's not going to continue to scale up. And so maybe they haven't been data driven up until that point. I mean, just like I wasn't as a merchant, our company was not up until that point. But they know that they need to operate differently in order to continue growing at that pace. I mean, I think there's a certain point you can get to with marketing know-how, hitting on a trendy product, whatever it might be, but then you need some systems behind it, which is far less sexy, but really important to continue with that scaling.
Okay. I have another question. But by the way, guys, if you have questions for Jill, clearly I'm the one interrogating her today. Please just drop them there. And if someone from my team is watching and it's live on LinkedIn and you see questions on LinkedIn, just copy them here for me, please, because I cannot multitask for nothing right now. So I wanted to ask you something like, basically, what would be some situations that a merchant might encounter when using software that does, demand forecasting and inventory planning? Like, what are those situations that a merchant would go through? Because I'm curious exactly how can this help? Because it's very important if it's you, if it's inventory planner or another, competitor of you guys. I'm just curious, what are the main benefits? What are the stepping points in, and what would be actually, what the merchant would get at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm. So I think that, when you're looking at moving to a system, like you said, whether it's inventory planner or another system, think about the value of your time and how much time you're spending on forecasting manually with spreadsheets. It's really common that I talk to merchants who say, oh, I have a full-time person just exporting data. We only forecast once a week, once a month, and we're not doing a great job at it, and so they say, okay, with this system, we can grow, we can have that person pay attention to bringing in new products or, reallocate their time and that sort of thing. So think about the value of your time. Some situations where software can be more helpful is if you're selling on multiple channels or have multiple warehouses. So each location or each sales channel has its own personality. So I saw this as a merchant so we primarily sold online, but at one point we did open up a retail store. And it had a totally different personality than what we were selling online. So our lowest selling category online was our best selling category in the physical store.
Yeah.
We did not see that coming. So we need to forecast for each one of those. If you have an East Coast or West Coast warehouse, people want different things. They sell at different rates. So you need to think about all of these different things. They're going to have different lead times. It takes a different amount of time to ship from the supplier to West Coast versus East Coast warehouse. So think about, the complexities of how much do I ship for Amazon versus how much do I have at my primary warehouse. Amazon has some interesting inventory limitations right now heading into the holidays. So that's another consideration. And then, within your catalog, another complexity can be if you're handling bundles or kits or assembled products, you need to look at the components of that. So every sale of our finished good or our kit needs to translate as demand for its components. So those could be components that we either sell on their own or don't, if it's an assembled product. But you need to have those on hand so that we can assemble them, so that we can kit them, and make sure that all of that demand is put together. So that's another common thing that I hear from merchants is just getting a sense of putting all of that component demand together so that they know how much to get from each of their suppliers can really be super time intensive, but software like Inventory Planner can really help out with that and save a lot of time too.
Okay. I have a question here from Mara, and she's asking, how is Inventory Planner helping e-commerce shop that need to change their stocks everywhere, like collections due to new trends and so on?
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of approaches that you can take for that. One is if you have similar items in the past, you can actually merge the two together. So you're saying the sales history of the old item that we don't carry anymore, we think that this item is going to perform similarly. So this can be helpful if you are replacing with just a similar size of item. So say you have something that was 2 kilograms before, now it's going to be 2.1. We think they're going to perform similarly, so we can link the sales history together. That's one approach. Another approach is to tie the forecast of the variant to how the category performs. So let's kind of break this down and talk about what this means. If we have a newer item, let's say it's seasonal even, a summer dress, we know how it performs within the category. It's accounting for, let's say, 2% of the category's sales. And we know how those summer dresses as a category perform overall. We know that they're going to peak in warmer months, they're going to drop off in colder months. So even though that particular dress has not been around in the colder months, we know that it's going to drop off based on what the category is doing. So we'll peg that to the category and say it's going to be 2% of how the category is performing, and we know that's going to drop off in colder months. So that's another approach. It's called top-down forecasting. So just referencing the category performance. So those are two approaches that I would take with newer products and trying to figure out how they're going to perform in the future.
That sounds good. I hope, Mara, this answered your questions. So let's talk a bit about the topic of basically identifying that what are the inventory priorities to avoid missed revenue, and then I would like to go a bit over how you can liquidate overstock to generate cash, because cash rules everything around us.
For sure.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. So in terms of prioritizing what to get back in stock, I kind of walked through those different factors that we take into consideration, figuring out how many units we want to order. So we can look at forecast lost profit. We can look at what we call replenishment cost. So it's the number of units we need to order times the cost price. That'll be the amount on our purchase order. You could look at forecast lost revenue. I think looking at profit is better because that's what it boils down to. We want to know the profit. If I have to reiterate. Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'd start on those. Some other metrics that, depending on the industry, so fashion merchandisers or merchants will look at stock turn. I mean, a lot of merchants look at stock turn, but in particular, fashion will look at stock turn, because if something's trendy right now, it's got to move. Like, we can't have it sitting around. It's really losing value in several ways to be sitting around. So stock turn, just looking at how long does it take between acquiring the inventory and moving it out the door to our customers. The store I was running, we were able to improve our stock turn by 8x. So it was 8 times better than it used to be. One, by not missing out on revenue and just like really honing in on our top priority products, but then also getting our overstock down significantly, because that was just drawing out that. Another metric that people look at is stock cover of their current inventory on hand. So that could be in days, weeks, or months, really looking at, with the amount that I have in my warehouse right now, how long will this last? And that can vary by, if you're a fashion retailer, it can vary by size. So I was just working with a merchant who they were looking at it on the style level, but that was kind of throwing things off because the, one size was selling really slowly, but all the other sizes were selling really quickly. So, take a look at it on a granular level, treat those different sizes individually to really hone in and get a lot more precise about your inventory control. Moving to overstock. So I love talking about how to get overstock out of a warehouse. So one thing that I think that there's a lot can be done with bundles or kits to get it out. So one, it could be selling multiple quantities of the same thing. And I have a great example of this that we did with my store, where we used to have these bulk, so we're selling dog bones, right? So we had these bulk purchasing options of 1, 3, 6, 12, 15, I don't know. We had like 6 or 7 options. It's too much. It's decision paralysis. People cannot make a decision. We learned. We didn't know that. We actually made a change to only sell either singles in 15s or 30s because they came in boxes of 15. And so it made our shipping and our fulfillment a lot more efficient as well. That's the real reason we did it. But we slimmed it down. People bought the higher option. It was higher than, the 30s. We didn't even offer anything close to that before. People bought more of those. The shipping was cheaper. The fulfillment was faster. The conversion rate was better. So like slim it down, make it easy for people and don't overwhelm them, but offer those bulk options of the same thing, moving a lot of them out. Think about your shipping costs too. Maybe it costs me $5 to send you a package for starters, but if you order 2 bones instead of 1 bone, it only costs me $1 more to ship that. It doesn't cost me a whole nother $5 to ship that. So think about, how do I move more out, get that cart value up per customer, go back to returning customers to your earlier point, like how do we get them on subscriptions and things like this. To bundles, you can also bundle less popular items with more popular items. You can kit it as an experience, maybe a starter pack or, something like this, or bonus free gift, or buy this, get this for some price. Make it an incentive. I think that structure of buy this, get this free gift is nice if you have a quality-based brand. So it's not centered around discounts. You don't want to put discounts and sales out there a whole lot. So you're upselling rather than saying, here's this original item for 25% off. So think about how you're adding more value rather than saying this thing is actually cheap. So those bundles can be a nice way to move it out, present more value. It's a new way to look at a product and your existing customers who have been around before. So those are a couple ideas on how to get overstock out. Of course, you can cut the price. I think it's worth getting creative on marketing a bit to try that. But like I said, don't be too precious about squeezing every last dollar out of your overstock. If it's really overstocked, get it out of there. Get the cash.
You don't want it to be there.
Yeah. Put it somewhere else in your business. Just do it. So, to the point about stock turn of both anticipating where people will spend money and getting rid of that overstock. There's one company I worked with that they were looking at the value of inventory that they had in their warehouse. So the stock cost, what's the cost value of that? Anybody who's working with a bookkeeper knows you need to tell them this every month, right? So they were looking at the value of their inventory and they said, okay, we want to bring this down. And they had very trendy items. So they wanted to be really responsive. So what they did is say, okay, instead of ordering for 45 days at a time, we want to order for 30 days at a time. We're going to be ordering more frequently, but smaller amounts. They were able to bring down their stock cost by $1.5 million in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Right? That's a ton of money really fast. So think about, they have $1.5 million that's liquid now that wasn't before. So they can put it somewhere else in their business, whether it's inventory, marketing, whatever it might be. And that just made a huge difference for their cash flow situation. So paying attention to how do we hone in on that stock churn, making those smart investments and then clearing out when we've made bad investments before, really can make a huge difference to what cash is liquid for your business.
Exactly. And not leaving money on the table just out of ignorance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just totally tied up. And so, I think that you just have got to be aggressive about it. That's my opinion now. I've come around. Got to be aggressive.
So I have a question from one of our users that sent it to me on WhatsApp because we're at the end of the show and I still want to ask you something, but he messaged me. So He's asking me, basically, he told me to not give his name. He's asking me, how would the merchant basically that sells a product that is not like frequently purchased, like it's a one product, how how can he go about it? Because he has sales, but it's not repetitive purchases. It's one-time purchases because it's not a product that you will use frequently. So he's asking me how can, because he's the manufacturer too, he works with the manufacturers as well. He says he always doesn't know exactly how many to order. So how would you approach a merchant that sells a product that you can only buy once?
Yeah, so this is a tricky situation where maybe you're working with really high value items that you don't want to have a bunch of them sitting around. You're tying up a lot of cash with just a few items. So I think that, working with your manufacturer can really come in key here, and building up a good relationship with them over time. So if you can forecast to them, so it may not go as far as placing a purchase order with them, but it's saying, okay, looking ahead for the next 6 months, we anticipate we're going to sell this many units of this item. Then they can have things prepared, maybe cut down on the manufacturing time, maybe even have a couple on hand. I know that I'm getting into what some people might think of as maybe fanciful thinking, but I've seen it where, building that relationship with the manufacturer over time, they could have some things ready to go so that you're cutting down on that lead time there. If normally that would be a 30-day lead time, maybe they can put together a few things and have those ready to go and cut that down. If they know in advance, okay, over the next 6 months, here's what it looks like, then that's what that can look like.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it's really tricky, especially for those high value items. But I think, building up trust with your manufacturer can really be important. One merchant that I worked with, they have two manufacturers that really build and store all the stock they need at the manufacturer site, and then they only need to pay for it when they're basically transferring it to their own warehouse, which is just an amazing situation. It's all ready to go already. So
if they're bringing things from overseas.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they've built up an amazing relationship with their manufacturers to say, we're going to bring you reliable business. We're going to pay you a fair price. We're going to communicate with you about these things. And so they've, cash flow wise, worked out a tremendous situation where everything's ready to go. It cut down the lead time a lot. They don't have to spend their money until they're actually transferring it over to their warehouse. So that's that's what I can contribute to how.
No, he has a lot of sales. He's using our software review. He has a lot of sales, and however, he doesn't. He's trying right now to implement some. I think I'm allowed to say that he's trying to add some new products, because usually when you sell a product that's just that product and you cannot use it for something else than what you have to use it for, it's good to always think about complementary products that can be sold next to it. So did you ever had a customer that just added new products just to make sure he complements the main one that they have?
For sure. And that's a really smart way to go, is really, getting your cart size up that way and having those complementary products. One other idea that we did was we found a fantastic manufacturer dropshipper who we could add their whole catalog to our website. They were a reliable dropshipper, good quality products. And the advantage was, okay, yes, we're able to get revenue from that, but also we can try out their whole catalog without holding that inventory. Then when we find a few things that do really well with our audience, we talk to them about bringing some of that inventory in-house. And we're getting it for a lower cost because they're taking on the risk when they're drop shipping, but we take on the risk when we store it in our warehouse financially. So we're getting better margins at the items that we know work. And, it's not just the full product line. We knew the sizes, we knew the colors that worked. And so if you can find a really good manufacturer who's willing to drop ship for a while, that lowers your risk. You can build up a relationship with them saying, we're going to bring you some sales. And then over time, you can look at bringing that in-house if the margins make sense. There's a lot of cases where that drop shipping situation won't make sense. But we happen to find one that did.
Okay. That's awesome. I have another question, and this is my last one from the audience, because I have one for myself too. Someone is asking us, what is the accuracy of the forecast inventory planner does?
Yeah, so it depends on the merchant, how much data you have. So if you have a good amount of volume, we can work with you on really fine-tuning all of your settings to get that accurate over time. So it can be quite accurate. If you're not putting in the right data, the right lead time or how much you want to order, then everything's going to look off. So it can be quite accurate. I saw that as a merchant myself. And so it can really do a lot for your business. That's for sure.
I know, especially if you're like integrated with systems like Shopify, sometimes the data in Shopify is not necessarily coincidental in a good way with what you are looking for as a software to get. And there's like always, because Shopify has discounts and draft orders and canceled orders and so on. Once you connect any system that does that looks at transactional data or business intelligence, you'll always have a bit of data cloudiness in the beginning because of the margins that Shopify shows, and they take in consideration orders that are drafted, or you have a canceled order but Shopify considers it as an order and as a customer. So it's always good in the beginning when you decide to work with a product that focuses on data, such as yours and ours as well, is to always make sure you validate that data accuracy in the beginning with the merchant and make sure everything is set up right before you actually go to action.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, garbage in, garbage out. Your data has to be good in order to get something good out of it. So yeah, definitely.
Very important. Okay, so my last question for you today is the question that our CEO always asks in the end, and it's a very good question. So I wanted to ask you, what are 3 things that really excite you today in the sector and in life?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'll try to make a combination of things. So business-wise, I mean, I'm really excited and interested in how the fourth quarter is going to go. 2020 has been so bonkers in so many ways. For e-commerce, for a lot of merchants, it's been Black Friday for a couple of months, in a good way. And so I think there are just so many things coming together that it's exciting to see the success of a lot of these merchants. I think from a forecasting perspective, it's a new challenge of figuring out how do we bring this all together. So I'm really excited about that. Nerding out.
It's okay. I feel this.
I think, to that point, I'm doing another webinar for Shopify next week to specifically talk about forecasting for fourth quarter demand. So I hope that's
here in the comments section for people to access.
Awesome. Good. So we're really going to take a deep dive on fourth quarter forecasting and like all those considerations that we talked through: Prime Day, Black Friday, Amazon restrictions, demand that went crazy in the middle of the year, all those things. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. Personally, I've taken up baking during the pandemic. And so I'm basically feeding the neighborhood, my family. We're a totally remote team, but if not, I would feed my coworkers like every day. So anyway, so I'm looking forward to making a tart later today. I'm into a lot of baking. Yeah, really. And then a third thing, I don't know. I'm just excited that it's summer and it's not cold. I love the warmth. I know that you're pregnant and you're hot all the time, but I love the warm weather. And so I just am trying to soak up every warm day before it turns cooler again.
You're originally from Nebraska, right?
Yeah, I live in Nebraska.
That's why you like the warm. But if you would live in Romania right now, we have like 120 degrees. I don't think you'll appreciate this warmth.
No, I mean, it occasionally gets up to 100 here. But well, my air conditioning was broken a couple of weeks ago. It's fixed now, so that's why I find it a lot better.
Oh my God. But yeah, it's nice, and I wanna because you are nerding out now. You're gonna make me nerd out. Are you? So how I feel right now, based on all the data that I see in terms of sales, like April, May, and June were like great. Yeah. But what I feel right now, looking at some of our customers and the people that we work with, is that the COVID luck is starting to wear off. Yeah. So we have a question here, and this is the last one, I promise, from Israeli Brondiel, I hope I said your name right. He said that we had spikes in sales due to COVID, just like everyone else. What's the best way to normalize these projections?
So I think that I would suggest bringing together two different things. One, I would reference what happened last year, kind of in the before times, reference what that looked like, and then look at what was the growth rate for this year. So trying to bring those two aspects together. And I think you're right that July is definitely down from what we saw with the preceding months. And July is typically a slow month. That's why Prime Day happens in July. They're trying to make up for those slower times. So it's somewhat expected, but I think it's right that things are slowing down after the pandemic. I would expect things to pick up again in the fall for all those factors we talked about. But for normalizing what's happened this year and trying to figure out what's going into the future, I would bring together both a seasonal aspect of what happened last year at the same time. So if you normally see a drop off in July, look at that rough pattern of things, but then also think about, are there factors this year that might also apply to that?
Yeah. But I definitely see wearing off, and I'm sorry that Israeli was a she and I thought it was a he, because we have this name here in Romania too.
Oh, okay.
I apologize for that.
Correcting the record. Yeah.
Sorry for that. Cool. So basically, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. This was really awesome. Please let people know how they can reach you. I had the whole show, the link to your website here. Let me share your LinkedIn as well with the nice people that joined us today. 1 second. And maybe if you want to share the link as well for your upcoming webinar, that would be perfect.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let me multitask and grab that link. Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today. It was so great to nerd out and talk with you. And
no, thank you, because I learned more things today. I told you, when I started in e-commerce, I was a total noob. So right now, today, I feel smarter after talking to you. And I'm also always excited to have more women in the show and have more faces in e-commerce, that are represented by women, because it's a man's world. And as much as I love James Brown's song, I really think, we should be, giving women more chances to speak out and, nerd out and, to show that we're good at this as well. So I really appreciate so much that you took the time to talk to us today and make us all smarter.
All right. Thanks so much. Great to talk with you before the baby comes too. So thinking of you often. Yeah.
I'll see you guys next week if I don't give birth by then.
All right. Sounds great.
Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.